Hi guys, just quickly before this video starts, I just wanted to apologise for the quality in the first 3 minutes. My camera wouldn't focus, but it rolls to some B-roll and it fixes itself, so that is what it is. Also, excuse my appearance, I've just come back from a mini hike. This week's video is kind of long, but honestly, I didn't know anywhere where I wanted to make a cut, so just grab a snack and let's get into it.
Her sweat and blood went into this cake, and you will not leave until you finish the entire confection. Hi, welcome back to Incatina. Hello, and welcome back to Incatino, and if you've guessed from the title, we're going to be making Bruce BOGTROTTERS cake from Matilda. It's a monstrosity of a cake, and the recipe is like kind of intermediate level of cooking. I think we all remember that movie. If you haven't, pause this video, go watch the movie, then come back and watch this video. The infamous cake, if you will, that he stole from Trunchbull's office. This video is inspired by Any Made in Japan. I love you, I think you're great. I was kind of just playing around on the internet and on YouTube, and I saw that she had done a Bruce BOGTROTTER cake, and it's one of those things, it's like the ratatouille, you know, from the movie. All of those things that you kind of remember as a child that look delicious. And the cake, although is kind of monstrous and the scene is a little problematic, it's something that you remember and is poignant, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to make it. So, why not? So, first things first, preheat your oven to 180 degrees. If it's a fan oven, 160 degrees. And I'm not going to make the same mistakes as usual, this is easy number one. I'm going to put on an apron to keep myself protected from the likely bomb mess that I'm about to make. Okay. Sorry, vegans that are watching. Vegan, this recipe is not, so avert your eyes if you don't want to see a bunch of eggs and butter and milk in a cake. I could not find a vegan version of this recipe. I probably could create one, but I thought that I wanted to keep it as authentic to the recipe as possible. Thank you also to deliciousmag.co.uk for doing the metric version of this cake. There's a couple of recipes floating around online. This one had all the conversions into metric rather than imperial, so thank you to deliciousmagazine.co.uk. You're going to need 200 grams of ground almonds, 330 ml of whole full-fat milk, 200 grams of dark chocolate, about 60% cocoa solids, 165 grams of butter, 55 grams of cocoa powder, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, a teaspoon of baking powder, 65 grams of self-raising flour, 330 grams of light muscovado sugar, and 4 eggs. So first things first, into a bain-marie I'm going to add the milk, followed by the chocolate, and make sure that they are melted together. This should take about 5 minutes maximum. So patience is the key with this. Eventually it will start to melt and come together. Just takes a little moment. So as you can see, it's getting darker in colour, it's coming together a little bit better and becoming more incorporated. So I'm just going to remove this from the heat and just set it aside to cool. So into a large bowl I'm going to add in the dry ingredients and just kind of fork them together. I'm not going to sift them, because if I wanted to work that hard, I'd hire a patisserie chef. So that's the ground almonds, the flour, the cocoa powder, the baking powder, and the light muscovado sugar. I'm just going to take a fork and just bring them together so that I can spoon them into the wet mixture with a bit more ease. Are there any other childhood recipes that you can think of? I'm kind of thinking of ratatouille. Obviously this cake from Matilda. Comment down below if there's something else that I could make that would be nostalgic. So I'm just going to set aside the dry ingredients. In the meantime, we're going to start with the butter and just beating that just so it's in a bit more of a liquid form. And then I'm going to add in 1 egg at a time. Now I'm just going to add in the vanilla. Now to stop the mixture from curdling, I'm just going to add in a teaspoon of the dry ingredients. It's just going to kind of emulsify it a little bit better. And then I'm slowly going to just add in a bit by bit of the chocolate milk that we made earlier. A bit more of the chocolate milk. The rest of it actually. And just keep this on a semi-high speed turn. Oh my god! Ah! Guys, I just set a tea towel on fire. Yeah, so I just set this tea towel on fire because I'm not paying attention, so this is what happens. Warning to everyone, turn your gas cooker off when you're making food. Or you'll end up like me and just fail at things. Okay, back to the recipe. We'll kind of have this butter, vanilla, chocolate mixture here. I'm just going to change the mechanism tool that I'm using for these, because as I'm adding in the dry ingredients, I'm going to need to kind of beat it a little bit more rather than whisk it. I'm just going to add this bit by bit until it's fully incorporated. Okay, so I don't want to overwork the batter. It should be quite runny because I imagine this cake is quite a fudgy sort of cake, especially with the muscovado sugar. It's definitely going to be more of a kind of molassesy, kind of fudgy, almost gingerbread-like texture, but obviously minus the ginger. So I'm just going to grease 3 cake tins. These are all 19 centimeters each. It's a 3-tiered cake. Well, not 3-tiered, but it's got 3 tiers to it, if that makes any sense. So I'm just going to do my best to try and divide the cake mixture between these 3 tins evenly. I'm just doing a sort of second count thing. Alright, so these need to go into the preheated oven for about 30 to 35 minutes. I'll see you when they're done. Okay, so while the cakes are baking, let's get started on the icing, because it's a ganache based icing and it takes about 4 to 5 hours. I know that sounds insane, but it's a little work and then you leave it to set for a long time, so it's not like you're actually doing something physically for 4.5 hours. So what you're going to need is, this whole recipe has nearly 1 kilogram of chocolate in it, which is unfathomable. So with the icing anyway, there is 500 grams of the same chocolate, which is kind of a 60% cocoa dark chocolate for cooking. Some melted and cooled butter, I think about 130 grams, yeah. And 200 grams of icing sugar, and 330 milliliters of double cream. So again, like with the other recipe, it's going to go into a bain-marie. The cream and the chocolate. And that's just going to really slowly melt together, and just stir it from time to time just to make sure it's loosening and melting together. Use my little pixie spoon here. Seems appropriate to melt the chocolate into the cream. So as you can see, it's becoming a little bit more viscous and thickening and melting into the cream. Okay, so once it's all about melted, and it's thickened and dark and glossy, just making sure that all of the chocolate is melted. You can then remove it from the heat. The chocolate and cream mixture will need to come down to room temperature, so just sit there for probably about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the temperature of your room, so that we can work with it. Okay, so once the chocolate has come to room temperature, it's time to whisk in the icing sugar. Now I'm going to put it in my stand mixer, but you could use an electric hand whisk to do the same thing. It's like a chocolate glossy river of Charlie in the Chocolate Factory right now. I'm just going to attach the whisk attachment. I think so that I don't risk a cloud of icing sugar, which might be fun. I'm just going to add the icing sugar in a spoon at a time. It's almost sickening the amount of sugar, butter, chocolate, cream, milk that's in this recipe. It's literally almost off-putting. There's huge amounts of sugar, but I'm sure the sugar is to balance out the bitterness that comes from the dark chocolate. There's no milk chocolate in this, it's all dark. It's the last of the icing sugars going in now. And I'm just going to crank up the speed a little bit to help incorporate. So, the final step is to add the butter in. So the butter needs to be added in gradually in a thin stream, whisking constantly. Last of the butter's gone in. Just going to leave it to make sure that it mixes all together properly, just for 30 seconds or so. Okay, that looks pretty good. If your icing at this stage is a little bit greasy, there's a possibility that the butter could kind of sit and not mix together fully and slightly separate. If it has done that, just add in a touch more cream and it should help to emulsify it properly. But I think that's okay, it's looking okay. I guess we'll know in about 5 hours. Oh my god, it's heavy. This is so much icing. But I suppose there is 3 tiers to the cake. Okay, so finally I'm going to just put this into a bowl. Just decant it for now so that it sits until I'm ready for it. Or should I say until it's ready for me? Because, like I said, 4.5 to 5 hours this is going to take. So I'm going to cover this, and it needs to sit in a cool place, but not in the fridge, for about 4 to 5 hours. And then it should be ready to ice the cakes. By that point the cakes will absolutely be at the right temperature so they won't melt. So I'm just going to go put this in a cool place and I'll see you in 5 hours. Okay, it is much later. But our icing is set. So that's all that matters, right? Okay, so I don't really have a technique for this, but obviously the cakes are done. There's 3 layers to it. Look at that, guys. It's a good consistency, which is great. Just gonna start to ice the cake, and hopefully, I mean, it looks like there's so much icing here, but I'm sure that it's necessary because there's 3 layers to the cake, not tiers. Just sort of generally smooshing this around, not being very precise given the, the time of day, to be honest. I'm not going all the way to the edges, at least not on this bottom layer anyway, because it's going to have the weight of 2 other layers of cake and also the icing on top of that. I feel like when I put them on top anyway, these parts where I'm not covered, it's going to smoosh all together. Smoosh, that's the right word, right? As you can see here, I've had a bit of breakage on this cake, but does that matter to me? No, because this is going to go in the middle of the cake and no one will be any wiser. And if you really want, if it starts to crack even more down this equator here, just kind of glue it together maybe, like, you see? Who's gonna know? Who's gonna tell anyone? Not me. I mean, this cake is obscene and ridiculous. I feel like I'm going to do a taste test on camera and I doubt I'll have another piece just because I don't think I can afford the weight gain. I feel like it's going to be really nice for the people that are enjoying it, that don't know what's in it. But I know that there's 700 grams, nearly a kilogram of chocolate in here, double cream, you know, butter. It's like, wow. And final tier. I've been putting them the other way around just so I have a kind of flat surface to ice on, but on the last tier I'm going to put the flat, smooth side down because this will form more of a kind of natural cake shape because it's rounded. That's just the cake aesthetic that I'm going for. Y'all can do whatever you want. Okay, now it's time for the final anointing of this ganache icing. So the last layer of icing is going on the top and down the sides and around. So even if your cake is a little ugly, you know, the bases and stuff, it doesn't matter because you can just cover it up with icing. It's just like real life. I did bring, this is my little crinkle cutter tool. I thought I could maybe do like a nice pattern on the cake, but maybe if I do it straight across. This isn't authentic to the movie, but who cares? I try. Art was not my subject. Okay, that's okay. Okay, right, now just around the sides. This dish that I'm using isn't... I'm gonna risk it all. Should I? Basically, I want to get round this. I'm not gonna do it. I've had the clumsiest day ever, Exhibit A, and I was going to try and lift up the cake and move it onto this flat plate, which I'll probably smash in a second, to get around the sides a little bit better, but I just don't think it's a good idea because I've smashed 3 things on 3 separate occasions today and I just don't think it's wise. You know thyself, know thyself, and know when you can trust yourself and when you know that you're probably going to drop something that you spent 6 or 7 hours doing. I'm going to put the recipe for this cake in the bio down below, Well, I'll put the link to the recipe because it's not my recipe, so I don't own it. So that if you want to torture yourself and recreate something really complicated that takes a really long amount of time, you can do it too. The cake in the movie was messy, I remember that, because it was like kind of supposed to be huge and gigantic and humongous and kind of obscene and gross. Even though, if you're a fat kid like me, hi, you always wanted a piece of that cake. Alright, it's Bruce Bogtrotter's cake in a really messy bowl that now I can't get it out of because I've basically iced it in and I won't be able to take a good shot of the cake, so I might be using copyrighted pictures for this. Shh! Right, I'm gonna taste it. The icing tastes delicious, and I think most cakes can be saved if you ice the out of it. It's a very heavy cake, by the way. I am not the strongest person in the world, but I'm not the weakest. This cake is heavy. It's probably... I wish I could weigh it, but my scales have a... you know what? I'm gonna weigh it. I'll be right back. Okay. So I'm pretty sure this bowl, it's not the heaviest bowl in the world. It probably weighs about 2 pounds maximum. And if it weighs 2 pounds, I think that's a stretch already, but I'm going to say it weighs 2 pounds. It probably weighs about 1.5 pounds. The cake weighs 6 pounds. That's a lot. Okay, let me stop babbling on and cut a slice out of this cake. The thinnest slice I can possibly cut. Okay. I'm just going to get it on the plate. You can see the layers, 1, 2, 3, and this is sponge, sponge, and sponge. Let's see. Was it worth it? It's a ducky mass. You know, I thought it would be more sickly because I know how much sugar's in there. This cake had more sugar in than any other cake I've ever made, even proportion-wise. Obviously to balance out the dark chocolate. I have chocolate voice right now. It's really good. It's really moist. And it just kind of melts in your mouth. It's exactly how you would think it tastes in the movie. Really rich, really soft, really decadent. It's good, but you're not going to want a slice that's bigger than the one that I just took. Okay. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Like I said, thank you to Emmy Made in Japan for the idea for this. I've been toying with some movie things. Let me know down below if you want me to do the Ratatouille thing, because I've done that before and it's time consuming, but it's menial work and it's okay. Thank you to Delicious Magazine for the recipe. I'm going to put that down below. Please make sure if you enjoyed this video to like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And yeah, I'm going to go have a coronary then and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!